What's going on, y'all? BrandonBlox'N here. Just to get this disclaimer out of the way first, this is a quick 6-step example on how I made this simple volcano explosion. Nothing too realistic, but it should be a great place to start if you have been using Blender for a while and are at least somewhat aware of Blender's simulation capabilities. This is not a full rundown tutorial on everything, but a quick overscope of how I got from the start to the finish line. There are a couple links to more resources that go more in detail on the actual simulations. Alright, so here we are in the Blender scene. Here is my camera, and this is the second candy volcano that I have made. I'm just going to zoom in the timeline here so we can kind of see everything. And then if we go into the render mode, then you can see what we are kind of working with here. Alright, step 1, the modeling / sculpting / texturing. There's a couple ways to make a volcano, but what I did is I found an Ant Landscape preset that I like and sculpt a deep and wide hole where you want the explosion and lava flow to happen. So yeah, if you don't know, Blender comes with the Landscape Addon, and then you can just create a landscape here. You can just create a landscape here and then mess with the settings, the noise, and all that other fun stuff. I am not going to go over how to use the Ant Landscape Addon, but there are other tutorials for that. But yeah, then I went into sculpt mode and just sculpted a pretty deep hole of where I wanted the explosion and fluid simulation to be. But important note, make sure your hole has little to no gaps in it for the fluid to escape through. That will save you some processing power on when you're ready to start the bake. Use whatever textures you want from what others have made with the asset browser like I did, or learn how to make your own. And so yeah, you can just grab materials that others have made and pull them from your asset browser. That is literally what I have done. If I go over here to the asset browser, and then I just went over to my food collection and just grabbed some materials from here. So I wanted to do like a candy volcano kind of like things. That's why I grabbed here some textures that people have already made. But then there's also tons of online resources that already kind of cover how to make a realistic lava-like material if you want to go into that. And this landscape is not to scale. Like if I bring in a cube, like you can clearly see that it's not to scale, because I think a cube is like kind of taller than the average person, and I think like, if I bring out my tape measure, it's only like 30 feet across or something like that. But you know, it got the point across. Alright, step 2, simulate the lava flow. This is not a tutorial on liquid and gas simulations, but I will leave a link to the courses as mentioned above. Again, there are a couple of ways you could do this. You could model out the flow of the simulation to start to make it more lava-like, but what I did was insert a UV sphere in the hole to where you can't see it, and it's not poking through the bottom of the volcano mesh as well. So yeah, this is actually an explosion. This is actually what causes the explosions that you see when they start to fly and crackle and pop and stuff like that. And I don't know why. We'll get into this issue as well, but my FPS has been really slow every time I play this, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, then we go to the actual chocolate lava flow, and it's hidden. Like, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but I just have it hidden. So this is my sphere here that's hidden from the viewport, and that is causing the simulation there. So that's what it is. It's just a sphere inside of the hole that I use. So then I can go hide this. So I actually animated this as well, and we'll talk about that in a second for that to pop up. But yeah, if I turn this back on, I'll explain more in a little bit. But before we simulate, I create a low poly version of the mesh with the decimate modifier, so I am not taking forever to bake out simulation on the high poly version. So yeah, you guys can also see I have a landscape low poly for Sims and then the landscape high poly for Sims, so this is what you actually see in the final render. But first I had it hidden, and I had a low poly version with a decimate modifier, and this is what I used for the settings for that. So pretty much just like as low poly of a version as I could with to make the fluid, like the fluid will still look like it's going on the actual high poly version, but it's actually being baked out on the low poly simulation version. That is a tip I found from CG Geek, so thank you CG Geek for that. So yeah, make your low poly version as low poly as you can without losing the flow of the lava. That will make it look realistic like it is in the high poly version, if that makes sense. Just use as low poly numbers as you can without losing that enough of that detail to make it look like it's actually gonna flow out of the volcano. But then, you know, also reference pictures help if you're still struggling on making the volcano, looking at what volcanoes actually look like. And then, like I said, using the Ant Landscape Addon and tutorials on how to use the Ant Landscape Addon. Maybe I could find some tutorials that are good on how to use the Ant Landscape Addon as well. But yeah, then when you're ready for the final render, then you just hide the low poly simulation and bring back the high poly. But also, because this is the actual one you're going to use, you are going to want to make sure that you have your fluid set, effector, and collision for your simulation to work properly with the simulations. But that's on the low poly sim, and on the high poly you don't need. But yeah, you want to make sure that your domains cover the entire volcano setting. And I'm actually gonna save as a copy here. So this is the thing for the fluid simulation. And again, it's on the low poly mesh, not the high poly that it's calculating on. But it encompasses pretty much the whole volcano for it to do its magic. But yeah, here are the settings that I've used for the liquid thing, and you can just kind of look at mine and copy mine if you want, and do further research on how to make it look like the way you want it to. But yeah, just remember I did it on a certain frame and ended it at a certain frame as well, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Because yeah, this is not the tutorial on everything about simulations, but just an overview rundown of how I got from point A to point B. But yeah, the higher the resolution, the higher the simulation quality, but longer it takes to bake on your PC. And also an important note, when copying the settings, I adjust the time scale to slow down the liquid to make it feel more like lava. Here are the settings used for the flow of the liquid simulation, because I just used a sphere for the actual liquid flow, and I think I forgot to mention that part in the last tutorial. So yeah, here's the sphere for the liquid flow, lava flow domain. Here's the smoke domain, and then these two objects were for the smoke to emit from, and then these two objects are the clouds. Again, there are tons of resources online for creating realistic lava materials. Make sure you create a effector type collision for your low poly terrain, as I mentioned before. You can have multiple domains in the same scene, and we'll get to that next. Alright, step 3, simulating the smoke. So I can go ahead, click on the smoke, and show you guys the smoke. So this is the smoke domain. And I added these toruses down over here to simulate the smoke coming out. I thought that would be the coolest thing for smoke to emulate. But yeah, then I just selected the fluid, flow, smoke, and flow, and these are the settings for that. You can mess with the initial temperature, you can mess with the velocity and fun stuff like that. But yeah, another fact is that your simulation object that you're emitting from has to be big enough. I'm not sure why your object has to be big enough, but if your object's not big enough, then it won't simulate the material or liquid or whatever. So make sure your object is big enough and for your object to be simulated. And also, I'm not sure if it needs to be a full object or if like a half object can work, because I was trying with like a half object as well, and it wasn't really seeming to work, so I just went with the full object, and then that seemed to work with the simulation a little bit more. But yeah, these are just pretty much cubes for the domains that I've made. You can set the domain type, like this is one that's going to be for liquid. And here are the settings for that if I haven't showed that yet. And then here are the gas settings if I haven't showed that yet. Yeah, you can scale your gas objects to cover the whole volcano or just parts of it like I did. Scale your smoke domain pretty tall, so that way when you are rendering it out, it doesn't hit the ceiling too soon, and then the smoke will fall in back on itself. I made that mistake once, I think, and then I made it a lot taller so that way the smoke would go all the way up before the animation would end. So yeah, just make your smoke domain really tall and your animation is going to last a little while. Again, the higher the resolution, the more realistic but longer render times. Mess with the gas tab to control how the smoke behaves over time. Mess with the heat settings as well. Alright, explosion time. Alright, so here's the UV sphere for the explosions. And all I did was I went to Object, Quick Effects, and Quick Explode. And then I went into my particle settings and increased the number of the particles. Said when I wanted to start and end the frame and the lifetime. And that was pretty much it. Alright, now we're getting into the other stuff I was leaving out for a second. So, step 3 was simulate smoke. Step 4 was create the explosion. Step 5, timeline and hiding outline camera tips. So for the timeline, I took rough guesses and adjusted them on when the simulations and camera shakes would start, and put markers in so I would remember what I wanted. So yeah, I just took rough guesses, and like 80 was when I wanted the camera shake to start before the eruption, 200 was when I wanted the smoke and explosions, and then 350 was when I wanted the chocolate lava flow to start simulating. And then I just put markers just so I wouldn't forget that. And then I also animated the camera icon for when the simulation would show and start on the exact frame wanted. And it seems that you can only animate that for render mode and not for the icon. And I don't really know if this is necessary, if like not animating that would cause the domain to show up in the render or not. But I just did it just in case. I don't know if that's what's causing my slow FPS playback. We'll get to that in a second as well. But yeah, you can see it's like not showing up anywhere, and then I have it show up right where it's meant to be on frame 350, and then it's shown. Like going back to where the smoke is supposed to start, smoke is shown for X, and then 200 it's shown for the smoke, and then 350 is shown for the lava. I don't know if that's the way the professionals do it, but I did it for this project and it seemed to have worked. Alright, step 6, lighting / camera animation and rendering tips. So yeah, I had very slow FPS issues and I wasn't sure how to fix it. Like if I play the animation, like I'm getting 1 FPS. Now I know I'm recording OBS, but I was still only getting 1 FPS even before that. No idea why, no idea what's causing it. Like I really don't have that many objects here in the scene, like this is it. Like, I mean the fluid simulations and stuff was kind of high, but I mean I have a 4070 Ti graphics card, and yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't be able to handle it. So I really don't know what could be causing the really slow FPS playback. Like I was having to really guess it right with the markers because I couldn't really play. Like I've tried a couple different things with this and it was still just all the same thing. I tried the simplify thing, leaving that on and off and all that fun stuff, and that still didn't really seem to do anything. So I don't know if it's something in my simplify settings. For the camera, I animated the Z-graph line with the noise modifier. So I will show you the graph editor. I will click on the camera and I will show you the graph editor. If I zoom in here, zoom. So yeah, just a Z location. Here's a noise modifier, and this is what I used for that, for the little bit of a camera shake. But yeah, let's go back to the camera and let's go like kind of right about here. So yeah, the smoke domain. No, I didn't free it. You're supposed to use a principled volume for your smoke, so that way it could be rendered rather than the other principled BSDF. You're supposed to use a principled volume for your smoke to show up in the render, which is something I did not know. But yeah, the lighting, I just use a plain old HDRI. And again, of course, you can find tons of resources online for more realistic volcano lighting and volcano materials and all that stuff if you want to go more of a realistic route. These are the rendering settings I used. I don't know if the noise threshold was too extreme, but that's what I went with. Took about a day for each part of the different scene. But yeah, extra tips for step 6 and for the whole project. I used ChatGPT for advice. That is a great free tool to use. Like I literally typed in how to make a volcano simulation in Blender 4 and it gave me like a 7 or 8 paragraph step-by-step solution with things to think about just from one question, and that was enough to really get me going. So use ChatGPT, use Reddit for advice and progression tips as well. The CG Geeks video how to make a volcano, a lot of it's outdated, but some parts are pretty good on that. I'll leave a link to all that below. And then CG Cookie for actual fluid simulation and gas simulation tips as well, with the physics course that I am now taking. And Ryan King Art as well has a couple good videos. But yeah, a lot of the tutorials I was seeing on YouTube was showing tricks on how to fake simulate a volcano with materials and shading and not show like actual simulation for Blender 4, and that was like 5 years or more ago as well. So that's why I wanted to showcase my struggles to hopefully help someone else out there and show a more updated version of this as well with actual simulations used in the software. But yeah, I just wanted to hopefully help someone else out there and me in the future as well. Thank you for watching.